To give this story some frame of reference, it involves me and my girlfriend. Now, we were 17 at the time of this happening, and definitely didn't look as old as that. The guy in question had to be late 30s, early 40s. Okay, to start off, we decided to have a walk through the park after my girlfriend had her nose pierced. The park is rather big, and I'd never been to it before, but she knew her way about, so she led the way. Along the way, there were people walking their dogs, people who smiled and said hello. Everyone was quite friendly as far as we could tell. This is the reason why, when the guy, of whom this encounter is about, walked by us, smiled, and said hi as we were sitting on a bench, we thought nothing of it, because, like I said, everyone here seemed friendly enough. After the quick greeting, we headed off down an ashy path towards the more wooded section of the park. After about 10 minutes of sitting on the bench, we decided to get up and start heading back out of the park. Trouble was, we needed to pee, but had seen public toilets on the way down to the benches, so, out of desperation, we decided to head up there. Now, along the way we stopped to take a few photos, and no one was around us by this point. For at least 20 minutes we had been, as far as we knew, completely alone. This has nothing to do with the story, but as we were walking up to the toilets, there was a missing person poster on a tree that was just below the hill to the bathrooms. Again, nothing to do with the story, but still was creepy with the context of the story. I suppose the only relevancy is that we were in the area and out in the open for quite a while, and so we were aware that absolutely no one was near us. After stopping for a bit, we then walked up the slight incline towards the public bathrooms. The area was sort of shaded by trees and away from the main trail, but in the complete opposite direction to the wooded area in which the man disappeared, like at least an 8-minute walk. We walked up to one of the bathroom huts and pushed open the door. It was locked, so we went to the single-person toilet that you had to put coins into to unlock, like a metal portaloo, because like I said, we were desperate at this point, but that was broken too. Literally, the very moment we turned around to walk back to the trail, the strangest thing happened. The man from earlier literally popped out of nowhere. What I've been trying to assert and get across is the fact that there was absolutely no one walking behind us for the best part of 30 minutes by this point. And then, out of nowhere, this guy just appears. That is the part I find most worrying. Was he watching us from somewhere we couldn't see? He quite quickly sprang out on us in a secluded area, away from the main park area and trail. Anyways, he, what I believe, plays into the fact he was looking for the toilet too, asking, "Is it locked?" Again, giving him the benefit of the doubt, because any person would take the answer and walk away. Maybe he did need to pee, but instead, once I say, "Yeah, it's locked," the question the guy goes on to ask is just downright disturbing and invasive, considering he's in his 30s or 40s, and we do not even look our age. Firstly, he asks, "Are you two gay? Are you in a strictly homosexual relationship?" The wording the guy used was weird, and word for word what I typed. Now, by this point, I'm a little shocked, but I'm a bit of a pushover, and in most situations do not want to be rude, especially to strangers, but my girlfriend is quite straight to the point. After I give my whispered answer of, "Yes," she immediately pipes up and puts the guy in his place, saying it's invasive and private matter, and none of his business. The guy is silent for a little, but then proceeds with, "I have trouble with the ladies. I was wondering if you two want to come by my flat sometime and meet up at all. This made my blood run cold and boil at the same time, if possible, partly from fear and disgust, and then from confusion. Like I said, this guy is mid-30s at the very least, and at this point, we've not even turned 18 yet. So I then say something to the extent of, "I think we're a bit young for you, mate." Thankfully, he immediately sort of backs down and goes, "Oh, I thought you were at least 18. Are you sure you're not? You can never tell these days." We confirm again, and he says nothing, turns, then walks away. No apology, no shame in his tone or face. We waited until he was completely out of sight and boosted up the hill in the complete opposite direction. We noticed a car following us for a bit, but then it sped away also. No clue if it was connected, or if we were just imagining this because we were fearful. The thing that annoys me is that if we were a typically straight couple, there's no chance in hell he'd have the audacity to ask for a threesome, as he implied. But most of all, the thing that unsettles me are the questions that I'll never have the answer to. Was he following us? Why did he wait until we were completely secluded? What would have happened if one of us were in the bathroom and the other was out in the open? Or if we had made it into the bathroom? What if he had followed us in there? There was no security cameras, as far as I could see. I had been looking for them as we were talking. How did he find us in a matter of seconds, after we saw absolutely no one for more than 30 minutes? Anyways, thoughts? So, to start this off, I live in a small village in the northeast of the UK. There are only 100 or so people living here, and hardly anyone knows its location. Me and my mum have lived here for around 5 or 6 years, and we do love it. There's woods behind our house, and out in the front there is a pen with 2 lovely horses that I go feed apples and carrots to. However, we have a family from hell next door. The problems with our neighbours started around a year ago, on the 2nd of January. I was downstairs just watching TV while my mum was cleaning out the fire. She went outside to empty the ashtray, and I could hear mumbling from outside. The next thing I knew, my mum came inside with the most confused expression ever. I asked her what was up, and she told me after she emptied the ashtray, our neighbour burst outside into her yard and screamed at my mum over the fence, saying nonsense like, "Oh, so Ellie can't park anywhere around here anymore, huh? How disgusting." I was confused, so I asked her what she meant. Basically, my mum had messaged our other neighbours, wishing them a happy new year and all that stuff, as they were at their other house and couldn't tell them in person. But while she was texting them, she saw a car parked around the back of their house, and she asked them if it was anyone to do with them. Now, she didn't really care about the car, she was just curious, because that was where they usually park their car. It turns out it was my evil neighbour's son's girlfriend's car. Now, this is where things get out of control. My 2 neighbours text each other about my mum's question, and for some odd reason, they see it as a threat. Yeah, ridiculous, isn't it? Me and my mum just shrugged it off because, to be perfectly honest, we couldn't care less about it. A few hours go by and my mum went back out again so she could empty our bin, when once again my neighbour comes storming out, but this time she starts threatening my mum, saying things like, "I'll kill you and run over your dogs, you fat bitch." I was in the kitchen, so I heard everything, and I was in shock. What was wrong with her? My mum had enough and came back inside and called her boyfriend and the police. The police came and my crazy bitch of a neighbour admitted everything. We told him it was true and that she was threatening to hurt us, but like a typical British policeman, they said there was nothing they could do, and told my mum to keep a journal and write down everything she does before he left. There were a couple of incidents where she would record my mum and her boyfriend in the garden and complain about our fire pit, but the next big incident was soon to come. My mum dropped me off into town that was around a half-hour drive away, so I could go shopping with my mates, and drove back home. She decided to park around the back of our house because she needed to empty out the boot and put things into the garage, and decided to leave it there because it was our parking space. A couple of hours go by, and I asked my mum to come and pick me up because I had finished shopping and most of our friends had gone home except for one friend whose train was going to arrive in half an hour. My mum goes out the back and sees that our neighbours have blocked her in, so she goes up to their door to ask if they can quickly move their car. No answer, so she knocks again. No answer. She was clearly in because she doesn't go anywhere without her car. So after 5 minutes, my mum got fed up and called the police to come ask her to move her car. When the police arrived, she came outside, and when they asked her to move her car, her answer was no. They kept asking her to move the car, and her replying with no for over half an hour, making my mum late to pick me up. My mum was getting furious and pleaded to let her get in the car to pick me up because I've been diagnosed with severe anxiety and can't be left alone. My mum phoned me while the police were talking to the neighbour and explained what was happening. Thankfully I wasn't alone because my friend was still here with me. He had now missed his train and was phoning his parents, explaining the situation to them. In the end, my mum got a ride in my stepdad's car to pick me up, and we also offered my friend a ride home. She moved her car while they were picking me up. I could write 1,000 things these people have done, like how they filmed me, a 14-year-old trans guy sunbathing in my garden, or when one morning they opened our back gate so that when we let our dogs out to do their morning business, they nearly ran into the busy road, or even when she came into our yard and nearly knocked our door down because our dogs were barking at her dogs. But this is already long enough, and I haven't even gotten to the most recent story. The most recent incident happened the start of this year. For starters, in December of 2019, my dog, Pippin, died. It was her time to go, sadly, so we decided to stop her suffering and put her to sleep. So this was already a hard time for me and my mum, because I was given her at the age of 2, and I'm now 15. But one day, while I was in my bed, my mum was downstairs, cuddling my 1-year-old pup, when she noticed something was wrong. He just couldn't lie down. He had a bit of foam coming from his mouth, and he was shivering like crazy. He then started to vomit violently, and threw up this weird substance that looked like chicken, but it was coated in something red. And no, it wasn't blood. My mum was positive it wasn't. She immediately took him to the vet, because we just lost my 13-year-old dog. There was no way we could lose my 1-year-old puppy, only a couple of days after we lost Pippin. Thankfully, after a lot of injections and vet visits, he was back to normal. Now, we didn't give him any treats that would make him sick. We just fed him his normal dog food, and my other dog was completely fine. He also couldn't have gotten something off the floor, because we had just finished tidying the house. What we think happened to him was when we put him outside to do his business, that psychopath of a woman threw something over our fence, knowing he would eat it. What makes it worse is that she is a vet, so she knows exactly what is toxic to dogs. Luckily, we're moving away from this crazy bitch this week, and her and her husband are now in trouble with the law, because they nearly beat a man to death when they were drunk, which now means the police are starting to believe us. So, my crazy neighbours who film minors sunbathing and poison dogs, let's not meet unless it's behind bars. Then I'd love to meet you again. This happened to me a 1.5 years ago. So there was this parkway that I used to always drive to. It was just a single road that went up a mountain with quite a few pull-offs, where you could see these beautiful views This one specific pull-off is one that I would go to most. It was a place where you had to go through some trees, but would end up on a rock that looked over a huge mountain view. I would go to this when I felt like I needed to breathe and take a break from life. It took me about 20 minutes to drive to that specific spot after entering the park itself. So one day, I decided that I needed to just let myself breathe and drove up. All was normal. It was actually a pretty day with bright skies and puffy clouds, and maybe around 3 p.m. On the way driving to the spot, I passed quite a few cars. Not many. It was normal to see cars, but not a lot when it's the middle of the weekday. I got to my spot, relaxed for maybe 20 to 30 minutes, then decided that helped, but was time to head down. Pretty sure my boyfriend was going to get off work. So I started heading down, and maybe 5 or 10 minutes into it, I see a red car parked on the side of the road with its hazards on. Sorry, that's all I can remember of the car. I right away remembered seeing that car on the way up, but didn't think anything of it. Maybe they just heard or saw something and needed to check out their car. I, though, did not pull over to check if they needed help. Like, I'm a good person and all, but I've heard all the stories. I'ma just keep driving. I also know that it's in the middle of the day, but I just honestly think I wouldn't be able to help them, even if I wanted to. This is when it got weird. Right, and I mean right, when I passed them, they turned off their hazard lights and got behind me. Still at this moment, no red flags are going off. Maybe they figured out the problem and was just waiting for me to pass to get back on the road. The only thing is, at this point, they were really riding my bumper. Like it didn't matter how much I sped up. They were right there behind me. At this moment, I look at my phone to realize my boyfriend has texted me. Obviously, I'm not going to text and drive. I'm on a swervy-ass mountain, and a car that is not letting me be. So I make a plan. I will quickly get off into a pull-off to text him back, and if this car does decide to follow me, I'll get back on the road and won't stop. I was thinking rational, but was paranoid at the same time. I'm driving at least 60 miles per hour down this road. Speed limit was like 45. And the first pull-off I see, I quickly turn my blinker and turn really fast into it. Wasn't smart, but I didn't know what else to do. But thank God the guy actually didn't turn into the pull-off with me. I take a sigh of relief and concluded that I was overreacting. So I thought. I text my boyfriend back, sit there for another 5 minutes just to make sure the car would be out of the park by now. So I'm literally about to be at the end of the park before I have to turn onto the highway to head back to my town. I see the now leaving sign, but that's not the only thing I see. Right on the side of the road, the same car was parked. At this point, I now knew something for a fact wasn't right. And again, right when I passed them, they pulled out right behind me. I raced my car as fast as I could to the highway, barely stopped to make sure cars weren't coming. I just pulled my car as fast as I could, left onto the highway. I looked to see in my rearview mirror, and they did the same thing. They are still right behind me. It wasn't even a question anymore of are they following me. It was, how do I lose them to stop following me? So I did what any sane person would do, and I sped. They were right behind me for probably another 3 or more minutes before I started going in and out of cars to lose him. It worked, and at this point I think they slowed down because they realized they couldn't have done anything anymore with how many people were around. I knew I felt bad for the way I was driving around these people, but damn, I was too scared to think what to do otherwise. Look, this could have been just someone trying to play around and scare me, but it worked. I know this isn't as creepy as other stories I've read on here, and sorry if it was long, but it did give me an adrenaline rush. Also, there was nothing wrong with my car. They never tried to pull me over or anything like that. They just ended up passing me when I was going up and decided to wait for me to drive down. So, whoever decided to wait and follow me down a mountain, let's not meet.